Now, I just did a helicopter tour and a boat tour on the island of Kauai, and one of my favorite things that we did there was tubing through these old tunnels. When we got there, I actually wasn't expecting this place that runs these tours. I think it's called Kauai Backcountry Adventures. They have a really cool facility and they have a lot of really cool options like zip lining and tubing. Now, tubing through underground tunnels just sounded like a really cool thing that I wanted to try, but I didn't know about the crazy history that was involved in these tunnels. Now, in this video, we're going to go over everything you need to know about this tubing tour on the island of Kauai. We're going to break down how much it costs, how long it takes, what you should expect when you go to do it, and who I think this tubing tour is meant for. Now, this tubing tour was just an added bonus. I figured while we were at it doing a bunch of the thrill-seeking things on the island, this kind of fit in. I can't remember how I found out about it originally. I probably saw some video of it, thought it looked cool, and wanted to give it a try. Now, I thought I'd grabbed some photos and videos of the actual facility they have where they get you ready and everything. It's actually really cool, but I did an update on my phone and I lost all that video that I filmed on my phone, so I guess I just don't know where that footage went. Now, of course, just like I forgot to bring the camera straps, I also forgot to bring my GoPros on this trip. But one of the really awesome things about this company that does this is called like Backcountry Tours Kauai. I'll leave a link down there in the description. Is you can actually rent a GoPro for 50 bucks a day, and then they'll just give you the SD card at the end of the day. So if you're looking to get videos, super easy, convenient way to do that. Now, when you go to do this, you meet up at one of their locations. They get you hooked up with all the gear you need, things like a helmet and a headlamp and some gloves. And then they get you on a bus and take you up to where they're gonna drop you off to get into the tubes. The whole thing starts at 8 a.m. and goes till about 11 a.m. So it really only takes about 3 hours in total. I would guess about an hour and 45 minutes or 2 hours of that you're on the tubes. Now, if I remember correctly, there's something like 4 or 5 tunnels in total. The longest one being about 3/4 of a mile long and about 95 feet underground. Now, on the way up, they give you a nice history tour and lesson about how the tunnels were made, why they exist, and it's really interesting to hear some of that original history from the island of Kauai. Now, these tunnels were originally made by hand with pickaxes by immigrant workers to create irrigation water for the sugarcane plantations, which was the main export from Kauai back in the day. Now, sugarcane on Kauai was absolutely huge and it required a ton of water to produce, so these tunnels were originally made to irrigate that water to those plantations. Now, even with some of those factors with the tunnels, I would still rate this overall as very relaxing. The water moves at a nice, smooth pace. Now, there's really only one point on this tubing tour where you have kind of a water slide effect where it goes a little bit fast, and it's really not that bad. It's not that intense, so something I think pretty much anybody could do at any age. And you're usually in a large group of people. It's not that crazy or that hectic. I really wouldn't call it like thrill-seeking or adventurous. It was really cool and it's cool to see this, but it's definitely something you could do with young kids as long as they're not scared of these tunnels. Now, you do have guides with you the entire time. There's 3 or 4 of them at any given time, so you do have people there to help if for whatever reason, it's not your thing and you don't want to go through one of these tunnels. Now, there's a good balance here of lazy river type floating where you're just kind of sitting there at a slow pace going through some beautiful areas, and tunnels, I'd say it's about 50-50. About 50% of the time you're actually in one of these tunnels, and about 50% of the time you're outside of one of the tunnels in just some slow moving water. Now, there really aren't any specific destinations or sightseeing things on this. It's not really something you want to take a camera on to take photos necessarily, but it is really cool, and I really would recommend it for pretty much anyone. If you have kids or if you're just visiting, and I just think it's kind of like a one-size-fits-all thing where it really doesn't matter who you are, what you're doing on the island of Kauai. I would recommend this. I think it would be a fun thing to do and check out. Now, there are some spots where the tunnels are quite literally back to back. You're coming out of one tunnel and you're immediately going into the next tunnel. It's pretty interesting, and the tunnels are just interesting the way they look themselves. They're kind of cool. They were made by hand with pickaxes, so They have kind of a weird, distinct look to them, mining type look. Now that longest tunnel is about 3/4 of a mile long and about 95 feet underground. In this longer tunnel, there is a point where you cannot see the light at either side of the tunnel. I would estimate that lasts anywhere from about 10 to 15 minutes maybe, where you can't see the entrance or the exit, where you're just in this tunnel that whole time. So it's a pretty interesting experience. I wouldn't call it super scary, but it is crazy. You are really far into this tunnel, and the tunnel does take turns. It has very small drops. So it's not crazy like a water slide. It's not that crazy or that fast. It's nothing like what you'd experience at your average water park, but it is just crazy because you're in this tunnel for such a long time. Now the tour that takes you up there on the bus actually gives you really good views of Mount Waialeale, where the Weeping Well is, and tells you a little bit about that as well and how it supplies all of this water. So it's definitely really interesting if you are interested in the history of the island of Kauai as well. Now, when you do reach the end of the tubing tour, they do take you to a location very quickly where you have lunch, and then after that, they drop you back off at the original facility. Now, I wouldn't really rate this as a thrill-seeking experience, but I know there's some people out there who are a little bit more afraid of tunnels and mines and that sort of thing. So let me know down there in the comments below, would you do this tubing tour? Is it something you would try and attempt, or is it something that would just absolutely freak you out? Now, when you go to do the tubing tour, you pretty much don't need to bring anything with you other than good shoes, something like Crocs, or some kind of water shoe. And when you show up, they're going to supply you with a helmet with a headlamp, and then they've got the tubes and gloves and everything else that you're going to need. Now, all of these irrigation tunnels, they go on for miles and miles all over the island of Kauai. It's a pretty crazy operation, and they're huge. So how did I rate the tubing tour through these tunnels? For photographers, your photo taking opportunity, this one's a 0 out of 10. That's not really why I wanted to do this one. There really isn't a place or an area where you would want to take a camera there to take photos, unless you like taking pictures of tunnels, I guess. I don't really think it would be something you would do to take landscape photos. This is more of an experience type of thing. Now, your video taking opportunity, it's dark inside those tunnels, and so if you take a GoPro, you're going to get some really cool videos. It's wet, so it's not something you're going to want to take your cinema camera on. You do need both your hands a lot of times. So video taking opportunity, I would rate this a 5 out of 10, just because you can get some really cool videos of these tunnels. But if you're a videographer, this isn't something you would do specifically to get videos, I don't think. Thrill factor, the tunnels are really cool, but I wouldn't call this like an adrenaline junkie thing. I would call this like a 2 out of 10 thrill factor. Fun factor though, it's definitely an 11 out of 10. It's really fun, it's really enjoyable, it's really scenic. So scenic opportunity, it's definitely like a 9 out of 10. The only reason why I'm not giving it a 10 out of 10 is because you are in the tunnels for a lot of this. So it's something to expect. You are going to be in the tunnel itself for a lot of this tour, basically. Now, scariness factor, this is a 1 out of 10. Unless you're claustrophobic or you're scared of tunnels or you're scared of going underground, I really would not rate this as scary or anything like that. It's kind of more relaxing than you would think because you're at a nice steady pace, and there are sections of this where you're just in an exposed, nice green area, and it's just kind of a smooth, slow-moving tube ride. Overall, though, I would highly recommend this again to anyone who visits the island of Kauai. Again, I think it's just a really fun thing to do when you're there. Now, in total, this tubing tour ended up costing us, for 2 people, $374.21. So that breaks out to about $180 or $190 per person when you include tax. Now, of the different things that we did on the island of Kauai during this trip, this was actually one of the cheapest things that we did. Especially when you compare this to the helicopter tour or the boat tour, which we did, which were both awesome, but this was actually longer than the average activity that we did on the island of Kauai, and it was one of the more fun activities that we did. So overall, would I recommend this tour, and do I think it's worth the money? Yes, absolutely. If you are on the island of Kauai, this is actually one of the top 10 things I would recommend, if not top 3. This is definitely one of the most fun things I've ever done on any of the islands of Hawaii, and I think it's just a very easy thing to do with kids or with your family members. Pretty much anyone who's physically able to get into the tube, this would be a good activity to do with them. So yes, overall, if you are planning a trip to Kauai and you're looking at different activities, this is absolutely one of the ones I would highly, strongly recommend, because I think it's going to be one of the things you do that you're going to be very glad that you did. Now, of course, in this video, we only talked about the tubing tour, but I actually have another video that breaks down everything we did in those 48 hours on the island of Kauai, including a helicopter tour and a boat tour off the coast. If you guys want to check out that video, I will drop a link down there in the description. If you guys like videos about travel and the islands of Hawaii, Kauai, Oahu, or even places like Utah, which is where I'm from, make sure you guys are subscribed because we go around and we visit some pretty weird places. Now, this video was not sponsored or funded or supported by any of the companies mentioned in this video. I actually just paid for this tour kind of on a whim. I think I might have seen like a video or a reel or something about it. I can't remember, but it was just kind of a spur of the moment decision. We decided we wanted to go do this tubing tour and just pull the trigger on it, and I'm really glad that we did. And of course, if you guys are into landscape photography or video making, you guys can always check out my website. I've got a bunch of photos from the islands of Hawaii, and I'll drop a link to those down there in the description. Now, if you guys want to check out this tour or book it for your trip to Kauai, I will leave a link down there in the description where you guys can check out the exact tubing tour we took. And of course, if you'd like to see more videos with more information about the islands of Hawaii, I will leave links down there in the description to my other videos from the Hawaiian Islands as well. Thank you guys so much for stopping by, and hopefully I'll see you guys out there in Hawaii.